Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joined forces with Senator Bernie Sanders to come out with new legislation in regard to loan sharks and payday lenders. Now, this is an attempt to put an interest rate cap on these loans, which is incredibly important, especially when you consider how much these payday lenders charge in interest to consumers who are desperate to have some cash on hand. The legislation proposes a 15% interest rate cap on all consumer loans, which would reduce what many Americans pay on their credit cards and effectively eliminate the payday loan industry. Now, the reason why it's considered eliminating the payday loan industry is because the payday loan industry charges interest rates that's not even close to 15%. And I'll give you the numbers in a second. It includes language that would prevent lenders from adding fees to evade the interest rate cap and sets penalties for violators, including a forfeiture of all interest on the illegal loans. So there are some payday lenders who charge interest rates up to 667%. How insane is that? And so if that's what you're in the business of doing, you would effectively be eliminated under this type of legislation.
Right, so there's a couple of different reasons why I love this proposal. So first of all, the interest rates are completely out of control. We used to have laws against this for a long, long time. In the beginning, it was based on biblical law. So, hey, Republicans, you should be in favor of that, right? Of course not. They don't care about the Bible. If it's not controlling people's lives, they're not interested. They're like, oh, Jesus is really well known for loving the money changers. Really? I think you should maybe look into that. Anyway, so they spend all their time protecting the bankers. But in the old days, going past things like rates around 15% was considered immoral, and you didn't need to go past it. But if you do, and in this legislation, they do allow for financial emergencies for a period of 18 months where you could charge a little bit more than 15%, so they built that in here. But the second reason that I love it is it challenges the Supreme Court ruling in 1978, Marquette National Bank versus First of Omaha Service Corporation. So what is that? That's the one that said, if you're dealing with different state laws and there's usury caps, in other words, caps on interest rates in different states, well, what applies? The home state or the state that they're actually transacting in?
Right.
And the Supreme Court ruled the home state. Now, why is that important? Well, what happened was Delaware and South Dakota said, okay, then I'm not gonna have any restrictions on interest rates. So all of the banks moved, if not physically, at least their corporate headquarters technically to those states, especially Delaware, and they said, okay, now I can charge any interest rate I like, and no matter which state you're in, since my home state is Delaware, my law applies. And they basically destroyed the ability to regulate any of these industries, especially the financial industry, all across the country. So this would challenge that. This would rein that back in and go, no, no, no. You don't get to cheat. You don't get to put a loophole in. This is gonna apply to everybody, and you're not gonna be able to charge people past 15%. Even if you're not doing payday loans, they're 600% interest rate, et cetera, which is crushing. You still have credit cards that go all the way into the 30s in their interest rates, and those are nearly impossible to pay off. And it creates a cycle of poverty and dependence on these financial companies, which is exactly what they want, and the government officials that they literally legally bribed by giving them campaign donations. That's what they want. But the problem is you can't bribe Bernie Sanders and you can't bribe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They don't take corporate PAC money. Sad day for you. So all of a sudden we got people representing us instead of the bankers. It shouldn't seem like a miracle in a democracy, but unfortunately in this day and age it is.
So I'm gonna be a little critical of this, and their hearts are in the right place, and they are among the only lawmakers who even give a damn about what is happening with these loan sharks. So I want to give them credit, but I also want to argue that it doesn't go far enough. So they want to cap the interest rate at 15%, but I would argue that they should cap the interest rate. They should start off by saying they want to cap the interest rate at 5%. Why do I make that point?
Wow, no, I don't agree.
Okay, well here's why I say that. So first off, let me just note that the proposal would allow the Federal Reserve Board to increase the rate cap for a period of 18 months, but only if there are adverse circumstances threatening the safety and soundness of the financial system. So the Federal Reserve would have a little bit of a leeway if they can prove that, hey, this might not be so good for the financial system. Now, I think the Federal Reserve has issues of its own, but let's just get that out of the way. But here's the thing, current credit card interest rates range between 15 and 23% and are higher for branded department stores. But banks currently borrow from the Federal Reserve at a skinny 2.5%. So look, here's one of the things that we're seeing in our system right now. And Nomi Prinz talks about this in her book Collusion, where she talks about the central banks and what they're doing with printing money. So after the 2008 economic collapse, the Federal Reserve is like, okay, we need to stimulate the economy, so why don't we just go ahead and print money and give it to these banks, like almost for free. Right? Mm-hmm. Almost no interest rate. And they will loan this money out to small businesses and Americans and help stimulate the economy, except that is not what they did. A lot of times they would use that cheap money and invest in their own stocks and do corporate stock buybacks, and they would just make themselves rich. But like, if they're getting this cheap money from the Federal Reserve, why do they get to try? I would argue, hey, 5% is double. It's double what you had to pay for interest, right? No,
because then they won't lend to people who are more of a credit risk. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. If they think they're not going to make back 5% on their money, they just simply will not lend to those people.
No, I get that. But my point is, don't go to the negotiating table at 15%. Go to the negotiating table at 5%.
No, honestly, they wouldn't be taken seriously. It's too low. Okay, so I mean, I like your aggressive attitude, but I don't agree.
I want to be aggressive.
Okay, I hear you. So,
and by the way, they're not taken seriously right now anyway.
No, but these are great proposals, and they're taken seriously by the American people, and that's why they're so popular. And so, and I want you to understand, they also have an alternative for people who couldn't get money from current financial institutions, even at 15%. They'd like to bring back banking through the post offices. We actually had that system in this country for a long time, and it worked fairly effectively. That's why the bankers bribed the politicians to kill it. And so that is public banking. There's 31,000 post offices across the country, and you could do it through that. I'd be super curious to see, to the point that Anna and I just discussed, what is an effective interest rate? Because if the post offices are doing it, you will get to actually see, without the greed that comes from the private bankers, what is an interest rate at which you actually lose money? So maybe you could bring it down to 5%, and even with big credit risks, still make money and have it be sustainable. But we're not going to find out if you just trust the private bankers to do it.
Right.
And here, look, this is an option. It's not like they're saying we're going to end the private banks. No, they're saying you could have private banks, you could charge 15%, but we would also start banking from the post offices and see if that's a better option. And if they can't make it sustainable, then it won't work.
Yeah, and I have to make one more point. Look, the Federal Reserve making interest rates incredibly low, right? When it comes to borrowing, it might sound like it's great. All right, we get to borrow money at a lower interest rate, but it's actually not great, because the fact of the matter is, it pushes this trend of borrowing as opposed to saving. Because remember, if the interest rates are higher, you're more likely to deposit money, you're more likely to save your money, and the banks will pay you a higher interest rate on that savings account. But right now, we have incredibly low interest rates when it comes to those savings accounts, unless you go to Aspiration Bank, because Aspiration will give you 2% interest on your savings. Yeah. That is insane. Aspiration.com/TYT.
They're technically not a bank, but they are a financial institution. Yes, last two things super quick. Delaware abuses so much that one of their senators, named Joe Biden, was known as the senator from MBNA, which is one of the banks back then. So that's the absurd situation we're in. And finally, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had this great line where she said, "Today's loan sharks wear expensive suits and work on Wall Street." It's true. The opioid industry, the OxyContin, all that, the pharmaceutical companies, they legalize drugs. That's actually opium that they sell. But they put people in expensive suits to sell it and bought off the politicians. And the same exact thing happened with the loan sharks. We should go back to making it illegal. Two easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.